All right, here we go.
Free speech that we have here. You probably don't have that where you're from, but we have it here. It's very important. No, it is. But don't you think numpties like that coming and say you can't say that?
But don't you think don't you think your language is just as much
I said stick it up your jumper. That was my language. So was that offensive?
What I'm trying to say is that when you make comments like,
so you're not talking about that, you're talking about something else.
Generally, it's your statements about Muslims being violent, Muslims doing this, Muslims doing that.
I don't see Scientologists doing it. I don't see Hindus doing it. I don't see Sikhs doing it. I don't see Jews doing it. I don't see Christians doing it. Unfortunately, not you, but I see Muslim brothers of yours doing it on a weekly basis.
Now,
and why don't you tackle that? Okay. You're spending your energy discussing it with me. Why don't you spend that energy discussing it with those Muslim brothers that you have that are violent, that are intimidating, that are threatening?
First of all, Islam teaches us a very important principle in the Quran.
Don't criticise your brother in front of the kafir.
But watch now, because Steve, you brought up a good point. Why don't you go to these other guys and tell them? Because you never see it on camera, you never see it in public. And I've had a couple of Muslims say to me, maybe they've said it to you, hey, some of these guys have been spoken to. Well, I don't know by whom, but supposedly there's a claim that some of these people have been spoken to. But instead of him responding to your question, we'll get a completely different response now, which is, of course, shifting the burden or deflecting away from your question.
The point is,
you have to allow me to speak.
Do I?
Well, you said we're civil and we want to have a conversation. We want to have freedom of speech, right? So let's abide by that. Are there some Muslims who behave very badly? Yes, of course there are.
At Speaker's Corner on a weekly basis.
Everywhere, all over the world. But there are Christians who behave badly all over the world. There are Buddhists who are behaving badly.
Do you guys want to say something there? I thought I heard somebody.
No, I was just laughing.
Oh, okay.
In some parts of the world. Do I say all Buddhists are like that?
Did I say all Muslims are like that?
No, but that's...
I did not, did I?
No, but I
did not, did I?
No, but
I didn't even infer it.
Your insinuation is that somehow this is an inherently Islamic Muslim problem.
Do these guys not listen? Does their brain just delete what you've actually said? I mean, you said to him, it's a weekly problem here at Speaker's Corner. Then he suddenly goes to the entire world. Let's deflect and say that there's bad people everywhere. I mean, this is a truism. Of course, there's bad people everywhere. He didn't address your question or your response or your assertion, which is, hey, this happens in Speaker's Corner on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And at one point, he go, do you know what? Actually, you could be right, and I'm going to speak to those brothers. I mean, holy crap. I'd fall off my chair if he said that.
And what I'm trying to explain to you is...
At Speaker's Corner,
let me just finish.
yes.
Let me just finish.
At Speaker's Corner, which is where we're standing, yes.
Well, I've been...
You saw it there.
Okay, I've been threatened by non-Muslims, but do I look at all non-Muslims as threatening?
Can we go into
violent?
the detail of when you've been threatened by non-Muslims?
Coming up very close, and I've had to ask the person, do you mind? What are you...
Coming up very close. And they have bad breath as well.
Oh my word. Anything to avoid dealing with your actual question.
Yeah.
I've had it happen to me. Yes, they came up very close. I mean, that was just, I should have gone to the police. Hey, police, I had somebody come up very close. Can you arrest him? I mean, yeah.
Are you trying to have a fight with me?
Examples?
Have you tried to...
People coming up
I'm just giving you... No, and acting aggressively. Acting aggressively. No, my point. But also, look, life does not revolve just around Speaker's Corner.
You verbally threatened with violence.
No, but hold on a second.
They're not standing close.
Okay, but life does not just revolve around Speaker's Corner. But
that's what we have to tell ourselves.
Hold on a second.
Believe me, the way Islam presents itself in Speaker's Corner, I go home every week telling myself, as I said to people many times, I have to tell myself they do not represent Islam. That's what I try and tell myself every week.
When, for example,
they're represented very badly.
So, for example, when women have their hijabs pulled off and they're spat on,
that is such an obvious strawman. This has absolutely nothing to do with anything whatsoever that you're talking about.
How often does that even happen? I mean,
well, exactly.
And I think everyone in the panel here and any reasonable person would condemn that no matter who did it to anybody else. So categorically condemn, or I do, I won't speak for you guys, but I categorically condemn anybody pulling off a hijab or otherwise insulting, or not insulting, I mean, assaulting, physically touching any Muslim woman. But as you quite rightly have said, this has got nothing to do with the point. And you did say it, Steve, and I guess the thing is, like, you know, it's teaching ourselves as well as to what was the point, what was the original point, because these guys will just not address it. They will go off on tangents, deflect, red herrings, straw men, you name it. This is their arsenal. This is what they do. And it's like, for us to remember to be disciplined. Hey, I was speaking about, can you address my actual point, which was, do you agree that it happens here with Muslims virtually only here on a weekly basis? Because now he'll do anything but actually address your point.
The thing is there any documentation that tells me I need to pull off a hijab? No. But is there documentation that tells Muslims you need to be aggressive towards others and don't take those and those for your friends? Absolutely, yes.
And you could pull out the verses, you know, pretty quickly as well.
When women taking their hijabs off in Iran are grabbed by the police and taken into jail.
We're talking about freedom of speech and living in the UK.
Oh, now
all of a sudden,
you're actually going to say that anyway. I think at the moment you're going to bring that point. Suddenly now, when you bring up a counterexample in the world, no. Now we'll stick to the UK.
You brought up the subject of hijab.
No.
I'd bring up the subject of the way women are being treated in Iran today. Choose to take their hijab off. And where are the feminists on that subject?
Okay. So
where are these bloody...
I get a little bit heated at this moment.
Well, that's good. Sometimes, you know, I think that's what I do admire about you, Steve, as well. You'll go into a bit of a monologue, which they do as well. So it's good to give a bit of medicine back again. I'm probably just trying to stick on the point, which maybe I need to take a little bit of, you know, license from you in this case, because that's what actually resonates with other people as well. You know, if you're too clinical or you're just like trying to stick on the point, sometimes that misses the average man in the street. So when you point it out like you do here, and you did in that 2 million view video, that connects with a lot of people. So, you know, that's why we've always said there's different approaches that work, whether it's Ansa, Sarah, you, me, you know, whoever it is.
Yeah. Amazing heart liberal feminists when it comes to women being persecuted in Iran for taking off their hijabs. Where are the feminists there?
Okay, so now you're moving the goalposts.
Oh, listen to that. That's the pot calling the kettle black. Yes. I've heard it. I've moved the goalpost, but I'll accuse you of doing it now. Of course, everything you said is correct, but, you know, again, I don't think he's going to address any of that. Let's see.
You brought up the subject of hijab. Let's go back to what you were talking about.
The subject that I brought up about the hijab and about women being assaulted was in relation. Hold on. In relation to you saying that in England, in Speaker's Corner, this freedom of speech is not being respected by some Muslims who are behaving badly or aggressively. So we have to suffer that aggression as well. You know, hold on a second. So, but do we live in an isolated situation in terms of our reality, as in just Speaker's Corner?
We can't talk about Iran. We must talk about Speaker's Corner.
No.
When we talk about women having their hijabs torn off, and I've not actually seen any evidence of that.
Oh, so it's not happening.
Tell Mama website talk about it, but all Tell Mama's website stats are based on are bloody people tweeting.
Okay, so
Steve, I've heard of Tell Mama, but I haven't sort of looked into it. Is that, I know there's some kind of like anti-hate group in inverted commas. Is that what that is?
It's a website where so-called Islamophobia, violence or threats or nastiness can be reported to. And then I think they might have even been sort of cited by the government in providing statistics. But as I said there, the reality, most of it's on social media nonsense. It's not actual physical face-to-face attacks or anything.
Yeah, so it's actually just people claiming something's happened. There's no actual evidence apart from, quote-unquote, their word.
Yeah, and people's word that has reported stuff to them.
Yeah. So it's all anecdotal evidence, and that, quote-unquote, somehow becomes statistics.
But how much suffering at the hands of non-Muslims warrants or justifies Muslims being violent in Speaker's Corner?
Yes.
Yeah, two different subjects entirely, and you know, the Muslims that are violent in Speaker's Corner are not doing it because their fellow Muslims are, quote-unquote, being harassed. They are doing it specifically because people are saying offensive things.
Yeah.
You know, they can't even justify it that way. Hey, we're going to be violent here because some of you are being violent to some of us, somewhere in the UK, perhaps. So they're not even doing it for that reason. So even that, sort of falls flat.
So I have relatives, family members, I have friends who've also recorded incidents where they've been spat at or they've been called terrorists. I have a good friend of mine who was called a terrorist on a train. He happens to own a very successful company. He's a very educated individual, and he confronted the people who said that to him. So we do go through a lot as well. But do we say all non-Muslims are like that, or this is inherently a problem
again, I
within
point
atheism?
out to you, at no point today or on any day have I ever said all Muslims are violent.
But
this is just something that, again, they are tone deaf to. At no point did you say that. No point that anybody that's rational and takes this, seriously ever says that. I mean, that's patently absurd that all Muslims do X. What we're talking about is Islam and some Muslims. And you've said it clearly here. I mean, it's like maybe some of the words are going in, or maybe they all are, and they're just being deleted. I mean, I know from a psychological point of view, we do this. We delete, distort, and deflect some of these incoming sounds when we try and comprehend stuff. And it seems to be on show here.
But this guy is one guy that I would say, he's got at least half a brain. He's got a slightly bit more intelligence than the likes of Ali Dawah. So therefore, is he consciously being disingenuous, or is he genuinely just missing what is said?
No, he is. Really, he is. I mean, listen to what he just says. He says somebody calling his friend a terrorist is equivalent to somebody sticking a knife in you. This is what he thinks. He thinks that being called a name is being suffering to the extent of another guy being violent. It doesn't work that way.
Your point is that
that was your statement, not mine.
Your point
I have never said that in my life.
Your point is that this is something inherent within Islam, Muslims, causing problems, and nobody else causes problems. And that's a fundamental,
which is different,
fundamentally
different to saying all Muslims are violent.
Okay,
fundamentally different.
But you negate
completely different statements.
But you wish to.
You're trying to conflate two, but you can't.
But you negate the swathes of evidence, I believe, where Muslims are suffering at the moment at the hands of many non-Muslims. And so this is inherently a problem.
Back to the point, you wanted to concentrate on Speaker's Corner and behaviour at Speaker's Corner. But when you choose to...
I suppose the only thing one could say there, Stops, and I think you mentioned it earlier, wasn't it, as well, that there's some Quranic verses that they can point to justify that, which the other people can't. So other people are behaving badly because they're behaving badly. Now, what he wants to say, or what he's hoping to infer, again, without saying it, is that, hey, these are just Muslims behaving badly. It's got nothing to do with Islam. These are just, quote-unquote, bad Muslims, but look at all the good ones. And I guess the response there could be, well, hey, how do we know they're bad? Are they just taking some of these verses literally and acting on some of the verses?
Go and criticize them yourself.
Well, yes, obviously he's not doing that. So I think that's the important point to bring up here, that some Muslims might be, in his view, misinterpreting the book. Again, this is so trivial. If the first statement in the Quran was, do no harm to any other human being, like in Jainism, we could say, hey, do you know what? These are being bad Muslims. It's nothing to do with the Quran, because the Quran's first words are, don't harm another human being. But of course, it doesn't say that. So it's left open to, quote unquote, interpretation.
My point,
but I'm not allowed to do that.
My point to you is that when people behave badly, why is it that if they're Muslim, it's always to do with Islam, and when it's just badly, that it's mental problem?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I think this is so funny. When you're talking about Muslims, it's Islam. I wonder why. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
It's socio-economic problems, it's family issues, it's single-parent problems, it's alcohol, it's all sorts of other... No, but I've allowed you to speak. You have to give me a chance as well.
He's not been saying anything, has he?
No. He's just reeling off all the consequences people could appeal to. But again, a Muslim wouldn't, you couldn't be a Muslim. Well, you'd be a quote unquote bad Muslim if you were drinking and blamed alcohol on assaulting somebody. But I guess what his point is, hey, there's all these reasons people do things, but you guys are just focusing on Muslims because, hey, they can take things from the Quran, which is obviously, yes, that's what they're focusing on. And
Muslims tried to kill Sarah because of socio-economic problems, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Drinking problems or not having enough pork. The reason they want to is because he's insulting their beloved prophet. Again, inexplicably more important than some people's family.
Yeah.
In the too long years that I've been coming to Speaker's Corner, I think it's safe to say, apart from one drunk homeless guy that I once saw being violent here, the only physical violence, the only threat of violence that I've seen in that 10-year period, increasingly so over that period of 10 years, is from Muslims. Right. I am not saying every Muslim is violent. You're not a violent Muslim. That is self-evident. You are not a violent Muslim. But every example, apart from that one, in 10 years period, now, unfortunately, almost on a weekly basis, is from Muslims.
First of all,
that is why I'm saying what I'm saying.
First of all,
and I'm not saying every Muslim is violent.
Right. First of all, you have to agree that's anecdotal, what you've seen.
Factual.
No,
factual.
Well, yes. It's factual to you because of what you've seen.
But ask anybody that's been to Speaker's Corner for any length of time. Yes, it's anecdotal for Steve. He's been there 10 years. Ask me, ask Sarah, ask anybody else that's a non-Muslim. Where does the majority, if not almost exclusively, the violence and threats and intimidation come from? Anybody who's non-Muslim, who's actually been to the park and witnessed it, would tell you exactly the same thing. So again, now he wants to claim one thing is anecdotal.
Right? So you're denying what I'm saying.
But sorry, there's one more thing I want to mention, because he says, but this is anecdotal. Who's the one who just said, I have a friend and he was called a terrorist?
Yeah, exactly. That's also anecdotal. So all of his claims are the same. But when you do it, again, it's sometimes hard to pick up every single fallacy that's being said here, because so many are said in such a short space of time that you can easily miss one or two of them. And that's why I guess it's good to view this again, because you're never going to be able to pick this all up in real time unless you're an absolute genius listening to every single word. And you've got to remember all the rest of the stuff he said like 10, 15 minutes ago.
My point to you is this.
We can't talk about anything then,
well, now you've given me a chance. My point to you is this, that whenever Muslims behave like that, many times I've seen fellow Muslims who've come, I have at times, moved, well, when I've seen it, because it's not as common. I don't feel it's as common as you say it is, but you say it is. Whenever I've seen an incident, I've stepped in and I've said, this is not the way to behave as a Muslim. Because in the Quran, as I mentioned to you, the verse that's in the Faculty of Law in Harvard says, "O ye who believe," out of the Quran, "O ye who believe, stand up as witnesses to God, even against yourselves, against your parents, against your kin, whether one is rich or poor." So if there is bad behavior as a Muslim, even if it's myself or my parents, I have to condemn it. So if I see
stop. Now the thing is that in Harvard, in the school library, they have an art installation where they have dozens of sentences they've taken from historic documents over the last 3,000-4,000 years. And they've taken sentences from out of those books, from out of those clay tablets, from out of those manuscripts, from out of those books, whatever. And they have collected some of those which have the word justice in them. And in this art installation on several floors, they have some sentences. And one of them comes from the Quran, which, yes, I agree, it belongs there because it is a contemporary reflection of what people thought in the 7th century. Absolutely. And that's why it belongs there. But number one, it is not the great, some Muslims are making this out. This is not the greatest sentence in Harvard University. It doesn't say so. It's art, and there's dozens of them. The second thing is, it's as a witness to Allah. It is to a God. It is not that you need to be, go and incriminate yourself, even if it is against yourself and blah, blah. No, it is not. It is only regarding Allah. And the third thing is, it says it touches on inheritance and family law. And we know that is completely faulty.
Right, let's carry on.
That's the principles that I try to abide by.
If only your Muslim brothers did the same. If only your Muslim brothers did the same. Because I think you might be in a minority.
No, but what you have to also understand is this. At the moment, no, I didn't.
What did he say, Steve?
I honestly can't remember, and it's difficult to pick it up on the video, but he said something quite abusive.
The irony.
At the moment,
so that's a new one. I've had racist, I've had xenophobe, I've had an Nazi. The most common one recently, hate preacher. The latest is terrorist.
Brother, 1 second. Brother, brother, 1 second. Hey,
now he's telling me to.
Who knows?
don't you think that your behavior is indicative of the very behavior that you're condemning?
What was my behavior that
you're not having a conversation.
I'm being intimidated.
You're not having a conversation. You're shouting. No.
If you want a conversation, let's go and get coffee. We're in speaker's corner in front of people, in front of cameras. If you want a conversation, let's go to Starbucks.
You and I were having a conversation.
You can't expect a big crowd of people shouting. You can't expect that.
But you're acting and you're behaving in the same way that you're condemning yourself.
No, because I'm not threatening any violence.
No, you are. You are.
I am threatening violence, apparently.
Where? Yeah.
That's quite a claim, isn't it?
It's difficult to find words for this nonsense. Does he actually believe any of this stuff, or is it just, is the mouth running and the brain is battling to catch up here? There's just words coming out here and the brain's going, oh shit, those words have come out before I could have time to think about it. I mean, it's just embarrassing. The fact that you are indicative of what you're supposedly claiming, which is physical violence or threatening intimidation in Speaker's Corner. And all you've done is put that to whoever that heckler was in his place for claiming racism and bigotry. And rightly so.
Doing exactly the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. But of course, no, he doesn't want to go off camera. No, let's not go and have a quiet conversation because I'm here to be on camera and to showboat.
You're shouting over people.
Stop threatening
you're
violence.
screaming. Hold on a second. You're screaming and you're preaching. You're not
preaching.
Oh, you're preaching.
It's one offence after another, isn't it?
It's
that's very violent. Preaching is violent. Oh yeah, you can't do
that's
violent logic, as someone just put in the chat.
That's rich, coming from these guys who go down there specifically to go and preach. This is incredible. The irony is just, you can cut it with a knife. Brilliant.
Oh, sorry, he said trillion, not billion. Yeah, I'm sorry. My mistake.
Oh, even more. There you go.
Absolutely. We were having a conversation. No. But we weren't doing a preaching session. We were having a conversation.
Should we carry it on over there?
We can have
the people away from the camera.
We can have it here.
Do you not want to do that?
I can do that, but let's have it
playing to the audience.
No, not at all. No.
Let's have a conversation over there.
Why can't we have it here?
Because you're playing to the audience.
No, I'm not at all.
Really? Let's go and do it quietly.
Why? I'd like to have an honest conversation with you.
You're insincere, I think.
Not at all. I'm having an honest.
You two together.
I'd like to have.
You two together.
I'd like to have.
I don't mean romantic.
I'd like to have an honest conversation.
You should have left it stand.
I'm sure he's talking about Imran there. Must be his buddy if it's the other guy. I know who he's talking about.
Because I believe that you've said a lot on the camera.
So it is about the camera.
No, because look, people should all
YouTube now.
No, because
that's one of the things that's gone wrong with Speaker's Corner.
You're going back into a monologue.
It's now all about YouTube.
No.
All about YouTube.
It's not about YouTube.
It's all about getting hit.
And the Gin and Tonic Show.
Sorry, what's that, Steve?
And the Gin and Tonic Show.
Yes.
What it's all about.
Yeah, now we've obviously got content here. What we do without this content.
Yes. Exactly.
But they won't. The thing is, they won't go and have a conversation off camera. They are specifically down there to be filmed so that it can get out there to the credulous and gullible masses that can see them having this conversation, who don't care what's true or don't know what's true, And so they just hear their Muslim brothers standing up there saying something. They could just as well be speaking literally Arabic or Martian, and the guys are going, yep, that was great. Do you see how he roasted him there? I don't understand what he said. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it sounded like he was roasting the other guy. That's what it's all about.
What it's about,
which is why he doesn't want to have a discreet, normal.
I'll have a conversation with you.
He wants it on the camera in front of the crowd. It's all about YouTube.
I'll have it over.
You were better than that, to be honest.
Now you're making assumptions about me and about my intentions.
You just said
about
it.
my intentions.
You said it. You want it on camera.
What I said to you is that you
want it on YouTube.
You've made certain assertions, and you know that people who listen to that, there will be many. There will be many who will listen to what you have had to say, and they will accept it on face value. And so sometimes...
You mean like when you guys say things with no evidence, good reasons, and they, gullible masses, accept it, and we see and we read out the comments every single week. Do you mean, is that what you mean? Or is that a double standard now that you're claiming there, Mr. Abbas?
Yeah. And you can see how he's starting to get defensive now because he's being pushed, because Steve is pushing him back and back and back, and he can see, I'm not going anywhere, I'm not winning. Oh my God, what am I going to do? My script isn't working.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. You're right about that, Stopspamming. I think it was yourself, obviously Steve, and somebody else. There was another video with a couple of videos with Ali Dawah and this guy called Adam from Canada somewhere. As soon as you take them off the script, now that's the thing, is to interrupt the script, the pattern. As long as you stay on the pattern, they're quite comfortable with that. So it's a case of interrupting that. It's like scratching the record in psychology, so that the brain has to now actually engage, because when it's not really engaged, it's just running on automatic. Then it sounds like they know what they're talking about. So.
Camera. So people
need to clarify by coming down here on a weekly basis.
Listen, Steve,
the threats and intimidation from Muslims. They want to come and see it in person.
Steve,
because I'm identifying what happens here. That makes me a bigger. What land are you living on?
But did you know that guy was a Muslim? No, I don't know. I don't
couldn't even see his face. He had a balaclava on.
He was brown. That's true.
He was that brown, actually. He was your colour.
Okay, my colour, which is light brown, right? You saw that. Well, I'm very cold, right? You saw that.
So am I.
And you automatically assumed that he was a Muslim, and that proved your case. That's called confirmation bias. That's called confirmation bias.
That's why he was shouting.
There are people here.
Don't make yourself look foolish by saying, "Oh, how do you know that person was Muslim?" You know as well as I do. He was.
Well, I don't know.
So don't play silly games.
I've never seen that guy here before in my life. So how would I know?
How does he know he hasn't seen him? How does he? He just said you can't see his face. He's wearing a balaclava. How can he see that he's never been there?
Oh, exactly. But what he obviously wants to do here, he wants to somehow make it look as if Steve saw him as not white and therefore claimed he was Muslim. And that's clearly not true. He said it, plus there's zillions of Buddhism there. This is the whole thing there. This is how they try and fail miserably and utterly to try and claim racism, bigotry. Hey, you guys saw somebody non-white and you automatically assumed it was Muslim. That's absolute nonsense, obviously. But that's what they want to try and do. And you're obviously clearly pointing out that's not the case. It was the fact that he swore at you or cursed you or threatened you or whatever the case was there. And the only people that do that reliably in speakers' corners are some bad Muslims. Not all, but some. And it's reliably the same. So are we justified in inferring that it's Muslims? Absolutely yes. And it's for him to prove the opposite.
Please don't be so hateful.
It's wasting of time.
Don't be so hateful. You're very hateful in your speech.
I'm hateful to Islam, not to you, not to Muslims.
Right, but being hateful to Islam, if you're hateful to Islam and you dislike Islam,
I don't like fascism either.
I have no problem with that.
Can I be hateful towards fascism?
I have no problem with that. But let's have an intelligent conversation.
Okay, but he's got no problem with it, but he's claiming that you're hateful. I mean, make up your mind. What the hell are you supposed to be hateful for? You clearly said it's not against Muslims, which any rational person would say. So you dislike or hate the ideology, and he goes, "Oh, I've got no problem with that," but then he still says you're being hateful.
As to why you hate Islam.
I've just realised you are actually mic'd up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely, because I think a lot of people who do hear these videos, they do go away and they listen to what you have to say, they listen to what the other person has to say, and then they can make up their mind as to who they believe.
But I'm talking sense and the others are nutters.
There we go, and that's exactly, Abbas, what we're doing now. So thank you very much for staying here, even though you know, you could have walked off with Steve, and we are doing exactly that now. We are critiquing and commentating on exactly this video. Cool.
EFDawah, yeah. My point to you is this: there are people who behave very badly, who are Muslims and who are non-Muslims.
No,
the problem that you have,
we're talking about Speaker's Corner, and I'm not letting you peddle the lie that there's people of all faiths and none who are being violent at Speaker's Corner, because that is self-evidently a lie. It is non-factual. It is incorrect.
Steve, what you have to
you keep repeating yourself that all people are violent. At Speaker's Corner, which is what you kept on focusing the conversation on, you do not see violence from people other than.
So when I was threatened by a non-Muslim, you're saying that didn't happen?
Someone standing close to him, remember?
But you question him on the claim, and somebody came up close to him.
Yes.
And he claims that that's threatening. But then, you're throwing it back at him. It's anecdotal there. So why should we accept it? He didn't like your anecdotal evidence. So isn't it fair that you send that back again? But, I'm sure we'll hear the double standard again now.
Well, what I'm trying to say to you is that you don't build up an entire picture from the handful of experiences that you might have had. I've come here I've been coming here for 3 years.
Don't ask me. Ask Tam. Ask Sarah. Ask Sarah Garvin.
I've been coming here for 2 or 3 years, and I've probably seen 2 or 3 incidents which have been of a violent nature. You're saying it happens every week, and Muslims and non-Muslims, in fact. Muslims and non-Muslims. No, look, the problem that you have is that the problem that we have, generally speaking, is that when these issues are discussed, and a minority of people do behave badly, and they're behaving out of the character of Islam, then automatically the assumption is, I hate Islam because that's what Islam does.
It's not the only reason I hate Islam.
But yet, when Islam has had centuries, when Islam has had centuries and centuries,
attitudes to animals, attitudes to homosexuals.
Okay, he's going to change over to something else here. But one of the key things, Steve, and you and other people can say it as well. One of the reasons, and we see it, and it's on the videos there, is critiquing Muhammad or offending people by saying something derogatory about Muhammad specifically. No other religion does this. Other people get upset with Christ, with some of those plays. Imagine doing a play in the West End like they did with, what was it, Jesus something or whatever it was. What was it called?
Jesus Christ.
Was it Jerry? It was linked to Jerry Springer, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Imagine trying to do that in this country, which is supposedly a democratic country. You'd need to have bulletproof, bomb-proof theater, and everybody searched, and then have a ring of police around the theater if you were lucky. And they'd have to all mask up because any one of them would be targeted.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why it's focusing, because these people who are violent because people are, quote unquote, insulting a man who died 1400 years ago. Nobody else does that. That's one of the reasons, and you're quite right there. That's what makes Islam such a problem today. Nobody else does that. Nobody else gets violent because they're insulting somebody who died 1400 years ago.
What's the attitudes to animals?
Do we really want to go off?
Well, you mentioned
really want to. People that are much more expert on animal cruelty and the ways to treat animals and the way to kill animals. People that are much more knowledgeable than the likes of you are, you and I. So veterinary scientists, the RSPCA, etc. People that advise the British government. Party politics that have come up with policy and then laws once they get elected. Decided what is the kindest, fairest way to slaughter animals in abattoirs. All of those experts, far more expert than you or I, concluded the way to do it. So that was the way the law was set up. Then along crumble 2 groups. One Muslims, one Jews. Oh, we have these religious beliefs that we want to do it in a different way. That was in breach of the law. So what does the British state do? Okay, we'll roll over. We'll just let them do it the way they want to do it.
So do you think
and let's not start talking about a subject that you're not an expert on. I'm not an expert on.
Brought it up
let's put our judgment in those people that are experts who study the neurology of animals, understand the pain that another sentient being consents.
Yes.
And the best way to deal with that, and when you're killing an animal, they've come up with a conclusion that non-stunned halal or kosher slaughter is not the right way, not the best way to do it.
Thank you for that question. Would you allow me to answer that now?
I've probably heard it before.
Okay. Are you aware of, because since we're dealing in science and we should always...
Okay, so just before he goes, just to prep this up as well, he's going to bring up an example now. And this, of course, is the both the beauty and the non-beauty of Speaker's Corner. He's going to bring up an example which Steve obviously doesn't necessarily have to hand. And this is what they seem to do. And we're going to counter this on the show here tonight as well. But this is what will happen. You know, you talk about all kinds of things. Somebody asked me this the other day. I actually got a comment in the chat, one of the comments. Rob, you're woefully unprepared for X, Y, and Z. And I did point out this is not a structured debate when you go down. You don't know what people are going to say. You don't even know necessarily what you're going to say on a particular topic, and things will change in the moment, as it did here in this comment here. And somebody else might have a piece of information that is either true or cherry-picked or, you know, quote mined or whatever, and they're going to present it. You are not able to, in that moment, necessarily refute it. Now, it depends who the person is. With this sort of thing, I would immediately go, well, I don't believe you. Let's bring up the evidence immediately. But generally speaking, you're going to be charitable and accept whatever the person is saying is, okay, there's something you're bringing up here. And so you're not able to counter that exact example in the moment. So he's going to bring up a quote-unquote scientific experiment now about slaughter. So let's hear what he says.
Hold on a second. And since we should base our opinions upon scientific research and experimentation and observation, are you aware of the Hanover study on halal meat? Okay, Hanover University did an extensive study on the halal, kosher, and the stunning method.
And who was this group?
Hanover University. You can Google it.
Town.
Hanover University, right? You can Google it. It's on Google anyway. You can search for the experimentation that they did. And what they did is they got young lambs and goats, and they implanted probes.
They didn't try it on pigs.
Can I finish my?
They didn't try it on pigs.
Can I finish my point? I let you speak.
This was an Islamic.
I let you speak. I let you speak.
They happened to do it on lamb and sheep.
So now you're going to trash the science.
Well, no, because there's.
Are you going to let me finish?
How do they know more than?
Are you going to let me finish? Are you going to let me finish? I let you speak. I let you speak. Let me finish. Let's be fair. So they injected probes into the animal's brain with ECG and EEG monitors. Okay? They let the animals heal over a month.
Heal from what? From
the probes being inserted into their brains. And then they slaughtered them using the halal, kosher, and the stunning method. Now, I agree. Let's go where the science goes.
Okay, we'll see that in a minute. Coming back to that.
Hold on a second. Now you want to say it's only one university. It's scientific.
Because
hold on a second.
Sources are not one.
Can I finish? Can I finish? This is a scientific. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? Okay. So what they found, Steve, pay attention.
I'm still with you.
What they found.
No, I'm not.
What they found is that when the animal had its throat slit, with the Jewish method, the knife has to be so sharp that in one incision, the knife should reach the back of the jugular in one incision.
When done correctly.
Hold on, absolutely, of course. And it should be done by somebody who's trained, who knows what they're doing, not some Tom, Dick, or Harry. The Islamic method also specifies that the knife has to be extremely sharp, and the incision was measured to be less than 1 second to reach the back of the jugular. What they found that the animal almost.
You can't do that on a camel.
Hold on a second.
How can you reach the jugular in 1 second when it's a camel?
Let's be sensible and honest. Let's have an honest discussion here.
That little chicken.
Let's not be silly. Okay?
How is that silly? I've seen video footage of camels and cows being halal slaughtered.
You said scientific research. At least be interested in the research that I present to you. Otherwise, you're being disingenuous. Okay, so it reached the back of the throat within a second.
On what animals? You said sheep.
The sheep and the goats they tested, right? They found that the animal almost immediately went into a sense of, or a position of being unconscious. And the animal was seen to be still moving, exercising, to try to push the blood to its brain. The heart was still pumping. Because in Islam and in Judaism, we are instructed that if you cut the spinal cord of the animal, deliberately, the animal becomes forbidden for you to eat. So we have to keep the spinal cord intact. The pain sensory probes, the ECG and the EEG monitors, did not measure a spike, because what they found is that because it took less than a second for the knife to reach the back of the throat, the pain sensory nerves were severed. When you prick yourself or you cut yourself, it takes about a second or a second and a half for that message to reach your brain. But because the knife cut the jugular and the sensory nerves, the animals felt no pain. Now let's look at the stunning method.
Okay, so I wanted him just to get through his supposed explanation for all of this stuff. Okay, so I don't know whether we can see this. Let's just bring this bigger. So here is the German study, and this was actually on this site. It's I don't know. Maybe this is Halal Monitor in Canada or whatever the case is. So here's the German study, and it talks about these electrodes being implanted into various skulls of animals, touching the surface of the brain, and they were slaughtered, etc. And it talks about it. So here it is. I'll actually post this link for people who want to watch, who want to have a look. There it is in the main chat at the moment. So this is kind of the study he was talking about, which happened in 1978.
78.
Yeah. So here's, I think this is the one. No, not that one. This one here. So here is a response to this. Animals feel the pain of religious slaughter. I'll come back to the beginning part here, and they talk all about it here, but basically they talk about this. And here at the bottom, it says this individual cites a 1978 study relying on ECG measurements by Wilhelm Schulze of the University of Hanover, Germany, apparently concluded that halal slaughter was more humane than slaughter following stunning. But Schulze himself, who died in 2002, warned in his report that the stunning method may not have functioned properly. So this was the method they obviously tested. So that's the conclusion at the bottom. But if we go back up to the top here, it talks about this, and this was done in 2009, so way after 1978. And again, I'll post this article into the main chat there that you can go and have a look at. Here it is. And this guy was one of the people who studied this in New Zealand. I think our work is the best evidence yet that it is painful. In other words, not stunning is painful. Basically, the findings increase pressure on religious groups that practice slaughter without stunning to reconsider. It further provides evidence that if it was needed, that slaughtering an animal without stunning it first is painful, said Christopher Walsh of the Animal Welfare Council. And then in most Western countries, animals must be stunned before they're slaughtered, but there is an exemption for religious practice. Fancy that, obviously. Predominantly Jewish, I don't know what that word is there. One of you guys might know. And the Muslim slaughter, let's just call it. Welfare groups have long argued that on welfare grounds exemptions should be lifted, as they have been in Norway. Johnson's work, funded by the UK and UK and New Zealand, builds on findings in human volunteers of specific patterns of brain activity, etc., etc. The team first cut calves' throats in a procedure matching that of Jewish and Muslim slaughter methods. They detected a pain signal lasting for up to 2 minutes after incision. When the throats were cut, calves generally lost consciousness after 10 to 30 seconds, sometimes longer. Okay, so this was a recent study done on this whole thing. And here they responded again to, there's a little bit more over there, but they responded here. Representatives of both faiths responded by claiming that stunning itself hurts animals. A spokesman for the UK, the Jewish thing, said the throat cut is so rapid that it serves as its own stun. And he basically says it's instantaneous, and due to the drop in blood pressure, etc., of the brain, the animal loses consciousness within 2 seconds. And this guy from New Zealand claimed that says the blood doesn't drain properly from a stunned animal, although this has been countered by research. And here's the counter as well for this whole thing of blood not draining when it's been stunned. There's the link as well. And there they actually quote the Quranic verse as well for that. He has only forbidden you dead meat and blood and the flesh of swine and that on which any other name has been invoked besides that of God. Quran 2:173, and it talks about it here. And the researchers' team has already shown that stunning does not affect bleed out in sheep. They've now done the same in cattle. They measured the bleed out in 13 cattle killed by the traditional Muslim method and 13 killed in the same way, but first being stunned by a captive bolt pistol blow to the head. Stunning does not impede blood loss, therefore this objection cannot be used anymore. And then further, if you wanted it, here is the EU rules on it as well. I wanted to cover this so that now, Steve, you've got the answers here yourself, which I wouldn't necessarily have had anywhere else as well, to counter this claim that it's not the case. So he's used an old 1978 study, and of course modern research, as you quite rightly pointed out, but you didn't have the evidence to hand, counteracts this. So I just wanted to...
Sorry, I don't know if you said, Rob, but also the scientist that undertook that survey back then, he's died since, but before he died, he actually questioned the research himself and questioned its validity.
Yes, so that was in the first part where it talked about the first one saying that the stunning method probably wasn't or may not have been done correctly. So he questioned his own research on the stunning method, that there may have been issues with the stunning method, i.e. it wasn't done properly, and therefore it seemed to suggest that stunning was as good or bad as normal slaughter, which has since been shown not to be the case. And the blood thing has also been counted as well. So any of this sort of stuff now one can dismiss again, if he's prepared to accept the science. But I guarantee you, if you had this to hand or we presented him in Speaker's Corner, he won't accept it. I guarantee it. Yeah. I'll put my house on it that he wouldn't go with the science. He will find some way to avoid this. Maybe there's new science that will bring this up, or maybe they weren't doing it properly, or some other excuse. This is the problem. When they've got a narrative that they've got to stick to at all cases, then they'll quote science when it suits them, which is my claim they always do, and then deny it, dismiss it, deflect from it when it counters their claim. So at least you've got it down. So you could quote stuff up that this has been refuted now quite clearly. All right, let's go.
When you stunned the animal, they said that in a commercial setting, often it required sometimes more than one stunning. And they measured a very spike, a peak in the pain sensory, probes, right, receptors, when they stun the animal. And the animal was in a state of paralysis. And the observation made, can I just finish first? The observation made was that because it looked like the animal wasn't feeling pain anymore, because it was paralyzed, it was okay.
Look, wait a minute here. Can I say this from a neuroscience point of view? I don't know exactly how they made this experiment, but like it's possible that you're not conscious. You're like, receptors are one thing, okay, but in order for you to experience the pain, you have to be your brain must be in a state where it is conscious, and you can I suppose that when you stun them, the brain is not connected in such a way that it's conscious anymore. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So stunning, immediately renders the unconscious. Yeah. I mean, there's been so many tests Steve's talked about it. I was at a conference about this in central London, near Westminster, as it happened, and they showed this, and they did the ECGs. They showed all the newest methods for stunning as well. I mean, it's like rotary. If you saw this stuff, you're like, holy crap! It looks like science fiction now. But it just shows how much meat people eat. I mean, they're going through it with chickens and cows and stuff, especially chickens on it, and they're all bolted to these things, and it's going around like a conveyor belt, not a flat one, by the way. They're all vertical, and this thing is hitting them on the heads. Boom, boom, boom. It's stunning them electronically, not with a bolt because a chicken's head is too small. And you can just see it as this thing goes around. It's like, if you wanted to be put off eating meat, if you cared about that sort of stuff, just watch some of these slaughter methods. It's like, holy crap. Even the stunning method is just like on a rotary thing. But you're right. But they've got very advanced ways now, and they can scientifically check whether the animal's stunned as well. They show the readouts there and stuff like that. I mean, it's high end in certain countries, in certain places.
And you understand yourself, Steve.
So you're quoting one piece of research from one university.
But if somebody shows me, but this is the beautiful thing about Islam, because Islam says that you cannot cause pain or suffering to the animal before you slaughter it, and that's why there's
it's the same rule that is why to beating your wife.
That is why. Let's deal with these.
I can't help myself.
I think that's a Steve classic, really.
I think you have to use stunning before you're beating your wife.
You need the wax.
But if in fact it shows that it does cause pain, which the science now does show, so what is Abbas going to say about Islam now? Because Islam apparently says that you shouldn't cause pain. And if we know now definitively that in fact it does cause pain when you slaughter in the halal method, what is he going to say now? Is he going to say Islam is wrong? Is he going to say the science is wrong? What excuse is he going to come up with? Because I'm pretty certain I can bet my house and everything I have, he's not going to say Islam is wrong. This is the problem with Islam. Instead of his view, this is the problem with Islam. They will claim Islam says X, Y, and Z. When we show that it doesn't, they will never accept it. They cannot, because now they would have to say that Islam is wrong, and that they can never do. So my question is, where is the intellectual honesty here? But excuse me for going back to intellectual honesty, but I love that, Steve, by the way. You're so good at thinking of those things in the moment as well.
He's the born heckler.
Say again?
He's the born heckler.
Years of training.
Yes. And
yeah.
Barbarism in your face.
Steve,
that's the connection.
This is the problem when we have these sort of debates.
What? Someone chips in.
No, because you resort.
The cameraman, the Islamic cameraman chips in with
because you have to move the goalposts.
That's the problem.
Because you feel compelled.
The Islamic cameraman moves the goalposts.
This is why I find it very difficult to have this
him,
discussion.
not me.
Because when you try to have a sensitive discussion,
tell the Islamic cameraman.
If you were honest, Steve, what you would actually say to me is, Abbas, you know what? As a man of science and believing in science, that's quite profound.
Man of science.
At least because you said it. You said it on camera.
When I'm ill, I go to the doctor.
You said
when
it
I
on
need
camera.
to have my eyes tested, I go to the optician. I go to experts in their field of science.
As people did in 15th century Andalus, they went to the Arab and the Muslim scientists.
What was the mortality?
Oh, that's so cheap. That's totally wrong. I mean, please, do people really still believe this bullshit? I can't believe it.
You're
trying to compare hundreds of years ago and they were scientifically knowledgeable. But most women died in childbirth. They died.
Steve,
no, because you're presenting something that is nonsense.
Steve,
again, well, if it's a red herring,
Steve,
it was his red herring.
Let me finish with that argument, and I'll deal with that one afterwards. So what you should say to me,
what was
Steve?
The average age of
so what you should, Steve, you're missing the point, Steve. It was 15 centuries ago, and it was in relation to what the norms of science were throughout the globe at that time.
Why did you bring it up?
Because I brought it up to you that Islam has a rich tradition of science, of knowledge, of understanding, of literature.
So what went wrong?
So that's another question now.
What went wrong with Islam?
We can discuss
it certainly isn't now, or the last 50, 100 years.
We can discuss that, Steve.
What went wrong?
But let's deal with the slaughter. Let's deal with the slaughter first. Let's not move the goalposts.
Did not come from the Islamic world.
Steve, let's not move the goalposts.
The television, the internet.
Steve, it's not moving the goalpost. It's not me.
What's that?
Moving the, I mean, okay, if you accuse him of switching subject, but moving the goalpost is another kind of fallacy.
Yeah.
Oh, back to the past.
Steve,
what went wrong?
What was modern knowledge 15 centuries ago?
Significantly backward from what it is now.
And what would modern knowledge be in 200 years' time, and which countries might have that modern knowledge? Would that make us stupid today?
Why did you bring it up?
Would that make our scientists stupid today?
Why did you bring it up?
You see how weak your argument is?
Why did you bring that argument up?
The reason why I brought it up is that Islam has a rich tradition
of knowledge
of science.
Why did you feel
because
you need to say that?
Because your stance of I go to scientists and I go to people of knowledge to understand the world is not dissimilar to what Islam preaches and what Islam was doing.
We were talking about slaughter.
Yes, so let's deal with that. So when they did this, when they did, well, it's a scientific study.
Sorry, Islamic cameraman asking a question. Am I allowed to listen?
Brother,
to
please, 1 second.
Respond? No,
It's an Islamic. Listen, it's a scientific study, and if a person professes, look, that's the beautiful thing about
Islam. Peer-reviewed paper, you know, where is it published?
Go on
Scientific America.
Go on the internet and look at the study. Look at the study. No. Go on Hanover University Halal slaughter.
Yes, but that's not enough. Is it peer-reviewed? Is it in Scientific America? Is it in Nature?
My point.
Where has it been published? What journals? Where are the reviews of it? You're not dumb enough to know a piece of scientific research, a paper, needs to be peer-reviewed. It needs to be published in well-known sites like Scientific America.
Wonderful.
Steve, my point to you is this.
Has it or has it not?
I don't know.
Right.
My point,
at least you're big enough to say so.
My point to you, Steve, is this, though. That you discuss these things as black and white, as if somehow you are correct, and the Islamic tradition, the Jewish tradition of halal and kosher slaughter, however, is cruel.
There is an argument we should all be vegetarian.
That is exactly the point. Yes, that is exactly the point. Well done, you've got it.
It is black and white. Either halal slaughter causes pain to animals, or it doesn't. This is black and white. There is no gray area in this. It's not like your personal preference. But if I do get down to Speaker's Corner again, I want to try and remember this, because he said earlier, if you're a man of science, you would say, Abbas, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to present this if I ever get a chance, or Steve, if you ever do, present and look it up yourself. I'll put the links in, but I can give it to you again. You can go back on this thing and say, hey, Abbas, if you're a man of science, are you going to now accept that Islam is wrong about halal slaughter? And here is the evidence. Are you a man of science? Here's the overwhelm. And you could Google this, Steve, in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Evidence anyway. And see whether he responds back, because that was his statement to you. His statement was, if you're a man of science, you should accept this as scientific evidence and then do whatever you're going to do about it. So we'll see whether the newest scientific evidence, which has refuted that old nonsense, whether he would accept it. See if he was consistent.
I've never said anything is black and white. And in fact, it's a scale of what's better and what's worse. And in fact, on a scale of what's better and worse, halal and kosher slaughter are worse than the methods that our scientists and experts have decided is the best way. But it's a scale. As I say, the next step on that scale is that we should be vegetarian. The next step on that scale is that we should be vegan. And we could stand and argue for those cases as well.
Are those scientific studies saying that it's cruel?
Some slaughter.
Yes.
Yes.
Where were they published?
Oh, now he cares about it.
Yeah.
Now he cares about it. I mean, Steve, have this for next time. But I mean, as I say, we've picked up the links here. And this is another tactic. So when you bring it up, they know you're not going to have it off the top of your head. He brings up one which has been refuted, which obviously you didn't necessarily have there, but you quite rightly asked him for peer-reviewed papers. But there's tons of this now. There is a load of it. I just read out some of it there. You can actually go to the sites and pick that up anyway. So this is easy to bring next time.
Across the board, to the point, Scientific America, Nature, to the point that the government decided,
where
not
were
just
they,
the
where were they
British
published?
government.
Where were they published?
Give me a second and I'll let you know.
Oh, so basically,
you don't want to let me know.
No, of course.
Let you know.
By all means. No, go investigate it. You made a point, but you said you yourself don't know where they were published. You're dealing with opinions yourself.
Of Muslims. It's like saying, do you know what page of the Quran that's on? You don't? Oh, well then, it's nonsense. It's a pathetic, lazy argument.
So I have to give you I have to give you my argument where it was published.
You were citing
and
one
who published
individual
it,
study.
right? You don't know yourself. You don't know yourself. That's what we call hypocritical, isn't it? Really?
I know the British veterinary.
Please find out where it was published. And
the question to ask is, hey, Abbas, if I find out where it's published, will you accept it as evidence that contradicts your position? Otherwise, I'm not even going to go onto my phone and waste it. If I find it and it's peer-reviewed in a scientific paper, would you accept it as evidence?
Exactly.
And I guarantee he wouldn't say yes. Again, I'll put my house on it. He will never say yes, because that now puts him in a position of he would have to accept the science that contradicts Islam. He will never do that. So, that's a good way of, because now I think you're going to go on your phone, but you won't get anywhere now, because it's very difficult to do in Speaker's Corner for anybody that hasn't been there. If you think you can just go on your phone with 10 people around and they keep talking in your ears all the time, it's not like there's silence where you can quietly look it up. You can't. And so I don't think you get a chance to do it here.
What was
and then what will you do?
no.
And then what will you do?
Oh, I'll tell you what I will do. And this is the beauty about Islam. Islam is about lessening the harm to the animal. So if you can find a method that is least damaging to the animal and keeps the animal healthy for human consumption, then the scholars would say adopt that way.
Really?
There we go. And that has been done. So why have they not done that? That's the question to ask. It's been done. It's clear.
Did you continue after this?
No, that was it. That was the end of. Oh, why did you think there was? Sorry, I closed it now.
No, this was a question to Steve because the video obviously ends, but was that the end?
It didn't carry on much longer than that, I don't think.